So with that, let's go to the Dude Maker hotline here. StreamYard Maker hotline, and say hello to Frank Wright from across the pond there. He is Frank.Wright, Frank Wright at Substack or .substack.com. You can find him on Twitter. He is at Frank Writer, WRIGHTER. He is a gentleman and a scholar, and he even looks like a gentleman and a scholar. You even shaved.
Yes, I thought I'd better dress up as a gentleman and a scholar at least to render the impression.
Well, first of all, how are you, old friend?
Oh, it's good to see you, Mike. It's good to hear from you again. Yeah, I'm jolly well. You know, I mean, as a hobbit, I live in the Shire, and I couldn't be happier. You know, happy as a lark, to be honest.
Before we talk about Trump, give me 2 minutes on a statement that Vance made. Saying that the new prime minister of Britain, who is a Muslim, or maybe he was talking about the previous prime minister, he said, well, there is nuclear weapons now in the hands of an Islamist country. And somebody went, well, which one? And Vance went, the United Kingdom. And he went, you're a racist, bigot, hick, icy. And I go, well, wait a minute. Ravi, whatever his name was a practicing Muslim. He follows the religion of Islam. He has the nuclear launch codes. Yes. Now, England's not Islamic that I know of, but you certainly have, about a third of your population now? Was Vance wrong?
Yes, of course he was wrong. You know, if you're going to be a racist, at least be correct about it. Rishi Sunak was a Hindu. He wasn't a Muslim at all. And we all know that our nuclear deterrent, as laughable as that may sound in reality, cannot be launched without the permission of the United States, and most of the submarines don't work anyway. So it's largely an academic question. The United Kingdom is not an Islamic Jamahiriat or fiefdom. It's I think it's a shocking thing to say. There are obvious problems given the enormous scale of the ongoing Islamic rape gang scandal, which is politely termed a grooming gang scandal, and now the upward estimate of that is that 1 million British children have fallen victim to the organised scandal that's been going on since the 1980s with the effective collusion of the state, which has repeatedly made statements to the effect that one must not mention this for the goodness of diversity. And so this is something that's been going on for 40 years. However, the idea that some kind of Islamic republic has control of the nuclear codes, which I stress we can't use independently anyway, is preposterous.
Okay.
It isn't the only preposterous thing that J.D. Vance has said, but, you know, such is life.
Well, hopefully he'll say more preposterous things. Because we're all into preposterous. Speaking of, the preposterous idea that the left was not going to try and kill Trump is now not a preposterous idea anymore because it's actually happened. Now, of course, try to kill is the operative word here, but your Substack from 2 days ago said, okay, well, this changes everything. The whole world is now changed as a result of the assassination attempt. Why?
Changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. I think it was in 1862 that Bismarck said that the great questions of the day will not be solved by rallies and speeches, but by blood and iron. And I think the time of blood and iron is upon us. I personally found it almost unthinkable, not impossible, that some such attempt would be made on the life of the future President Trump, who's almost certain to win, in my view. But I thought that it would simply result in his martyrdom and in greater division in the United States. And I thought that would mean that cooler heads would prevail. Apparently not. So I think that what this means is this is the explicit attempt to exterminate the only serious contender against the liberal global project. It's people such as Yuval Noah Harari have come out and said that should Trump win, it is effectively the end of globalism. We must take seriously the fact that these people are powerful. Max Blumenthal pointed out the other day that had the attempt been successful, a coterie of enormously influential people, including Larry Fink of BlackRock, had already convened to try and pick the next successor. This situation is extremely serious, and it underlines the threat that Donald Trump represents to the people who've staked their entire political careers on the survival of the liberal global death cult. They've attempted to destroy him legally through the manipulation of the media and so on, through the confection of various scandals, which have all been proven to be false. And none of that worked and actually made him more powerful and more popular. So, a series of remarkable errors in failing to secure a perimeter have resulted in a golden opportunity to end his life. And I think it's difficult to argue against the idea that the intention was for Trump's head to explode on live television. And I personally believe that it is miraculous that he survived. I think it's a miracle.
So this is something I talked about yesterday in my coverage of this, Frank. And I talked about, until 1976, Americans had not seen the Zapruder film. They didn't know it existed. No one saw John Fitzgerald Kennedy's head explode, which it did. So they were able to drive the narrative home that the shot came from above, and it was Oswald and on the fifth floor at the book depository. They sent Dan Rather up there, to go reenact it. Yeah, no one could have done that. But Abraham Zapruder had that film. The FBI got a hold of it. The FBI saw it. And then one of the arch villains of the 20th century, Henry Luce, bought it for Time Life Books and then killed it. Before Zapruder dies, Zapruder's family goes, "It's the only thing my dad has as a legacy. Will you give us a copy of the film?" And amazingly, or maybe there was some Masonic twist here, Luce agrees, and they give the Zapruder family a copy of the film. Zapruder dies in 1969. In 1976, one of Zapruder's children meets Geraldo Rivera and says, "Geraldo Rivera, there's a film of Kennedy being assassinated." Of course, Rivera, back in the time when he was an actual journo, Rivera goes, "Really?" Rivera gets the film. He goes to the bosses at ABC. He asks if he can do a show on it. He brings one of Zapruder's kids in there, and they show the film. The first time Americans ever saw what really happened to Kennedy. This is what really launches, then, the Kennedy conspiracy industry. The fact that the president's head explodes and the American public never knew about it. All you got was the sanitized, a bullet hit him in the head and he couldn't survive it and he's dead. It was an absolute, the goriness, the details of the assassination of Kennedy. Had the American public known that, Frank, in 1964 or 1963, had they had known the horror of what the CIA did to the president, I don't think history turns out the way that it is right now, because there might have been a revolt right then. The idea that the state could actually take out a leader in such a violent manner because it disagreed with it. Well, that's what it tried to do with Trump. And you're right. In this instance, though, they wanted the head to explode on international television to teach you little peons out there a lesson. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I think that there are obvious moves being made behind the scenes that indicate why it might be so urgent to get rid of him now. Obviously, several days beforehand, he met with Viktor Orban in the United States. Orban's just been on a shuttle diplomacy peace mission, the result of which is that the Hungarians have announced that peace is now possible. And Zelensky himself has remarkably admitted yesterday that he would now invite the Russians to these negotiations to end the war, a position that he has refused to endorse consistently since Boris Johnson sabotaged the last negotiations that they agreed with the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett in Istanbul to end the war weeks after it began. This is remarkable. So that's an end, a humiliating end, to the vainglorious project to collapse Russia through the proxy of Ukraine. This may be one reason why it's rather urgent to get rid of him. Another reason is that he has had the temerity to practically order Netanyahu to stop the killing in Gaza. These are two extremely taboo subjects to bring up in the liberal global order. And it's worth mentioning as well that the last United States president to challenge the Israelis about their weapons of mass destruction did have his head explode. And the only United States Attorney General to threaten to put the Israel lobby under the aegis of a foreign agent working for the government of Israel was also assassinated.
And who was that?
That was Robert F. Kennedy Sr.
Thank you. So you have this legacy here. Frank Wright is an author. You can find him on Substack, frankwright.substack.com. He's also hiding in plain sight on Twitter. Spell the name the English way, Wright. Frank Wright. Okay, let's go back to the piece. Why it really happened. So why did it really happen?
Well, the trouble with reality nowadays is that what with people transferring their personalities onto the internet and so on, and human relations being replaced with transactions, people's personalities are dissolving and they're apt to disbelieve in the facticity of reality. This means that whenever anything happens, there are some people who will always object to the idea that anything is real. Now, why it really happened, some people would argue with a straight face that it was a setup. That Donald Trump had somehow staged this as a kind of 4D chess move to get someone to miraculously shoot him in the ear from, I think, about 150 yards away. I think that's impossible and it's preposterous. And if you believe that, you simply can't be helped.
You just said something, though, that is really, really profound in a sci-fi kind of way. Transferring their personality to the internet. You know, this is the subject of all manner of sci-fi novels and stuff. We're going to invent a computer so large, it's going to be so powerful that you can actually transfer you into this memory bank, right? Then we're going to clone this little guy. And when the clone is old enough to absorb the digital information, then we're going to pump the personality that you uploaded to your Facebook page or your Instagram into the clone, and bammo, immortality. So the sci-fi writers actually got it correct, and it's actually happening right now.
Well, the problem with contemporary personality, or people being socialized, if you like, on the internet, is that their selves are no longer their own property. They're contingent. They're dependent upon things beyond your personal control. So you replace your real-life human relations with a bunch of imaginary friends that you only see through a screen. And in order to maintain those relationships, as it were, to curate your social media presence, you have to observe the rules of this parasocial organization you've joined, which then displaces your actual personality. So what I'm trying to say is that people are being driven slowly mad by their own social media habits, and this leads them to what's called apophenia. Apophenia is the term for where you see connections between things where there aren't any. And so you come out with these elaborate explanations as to why things didn't happen and why the obvious can't be the only explanation. I think it's fairly obvious here that there were obvious security flaws that many qualified people, even former members of the Secret Service themselves, have said were simply inexplicable.
True.
Because the perimeter wasn't secure. And one inconsistency that I highlighted myself was that there was an AP News report that said a police officer had mounted the roof where the shooter was positioned. And this officer is said to have been confronted with the shooter's rifle, wherewith the officer then goes back down the ladder and retreats. Then we're told that the shooter immediately goes to prone and pings off 5 to 8 shots with remarkable accuracy, clipping the president's ear from 150 yards. Now, I think that's impossible. I've personally seen some of the best people at weapon handling move and fire myself, and I don't think there's anyone on the planet who's capable of shifting immediately to a prone position on a slippery peaked roof and pulling off a marksman-style shot from 150 yards with the same weapon. There have been reports, several of them, of eyewitnesses saying there was more than one shooter, and they indicated a water tower, which was at a greater distance.
Told you.
The forensic report, which has been published by mainstream media, said that there was at least 3 weapons discharged at the time.
Now, that's news to me. I didn't see the forensic report. Frank Wright is on our Dewmaker hotline, frankwright.substack.com. From the piece that you put out Sunday, I repeat my charge that the enemy is the state, and that our liberal global governments are illegitimate death cults who hate you all and want you dead. What a radical statement that is, and it is entirely, from where I say, 100%, 110% true, and has been.
I'll do my best to get thrown into the gulag, and suppose you probably won't be seeing me next week because I'll be sent to some terrible little prison.
No, but the charge that the states out there are just ginormous death sex cults is correct. And if they all want to kill Trump, because they keep coming back to this, people keep saying, "How do you know he's not in on it? He's just controlled opposition." You know, you read too much internet bullshit. Okay. You're full of it here. You've lost the capacity to even reason any longer, because it's possible you think it's probable. Is that unfair? This is what the internet has done to people's minds.
Yes,
because
yes,
it's possible you think it's probable.
No, it's just people invent things for their own self-esteem. And you can seem terribly clever if you can say to everybody else, "Oh, look, it's all a setup. I don't have any evidence for this position, but I'm much cleverer than you, and you're benighted because you believe in reality." People who believe in reality are deluded, whereas I believe the voices in my head. I mean, I happen to have made something of a career of writing down what the voices in my head tell me, but sometimes they do correspond with reality. Now, as for the death cult thing, Tucker Carlson himself said yesterday effectively the same thing about the death cult, saying that the people who rule the liberal global order basically desire the power of life and death because they wish to supplant God. That's a fairly banal and obvious remark, and I simply repeat it myself. As for the illegitimacy of states, the British philosopher who's probably the best living expert on liberalism, John Gray, said last year in November that the liberal governments of the West have lost the right to rule because they're no longer legitimate. He says this quietly in a kind of academic setting, but his meaning is exactly the same as mine. He says that the reason they're not legitimate is because governments have a duty to their people and they're not discharging them. And those duties include a guarantee of prosperity, security, and to hold more public trust than they don't. Now, people overwhelmingly don't trust their governments. These governments have made the world and the nations more unstable, and they're certainly not delivering prosperity. They're delivering national suicide, and they're destroying everything of value in human life, including the value of human life itself.
Let's talk about the indispensable man going off the script. This was the most fascinating part of what I thought your essay was. And your essays are always fascinating. And
it was also long.
And I read all of them religiously when they come out.
Poor you.
Others have now picked up on this and are making a point. I will be interested to see the forensic data on this. Okay, if Trump doesn't go off the teleprompters and off the script, if he doesn't call for the graphic that's not on the teleprompter to be flashed up on the giant TV so everyone can see the ginormous spike in illegal alien criminal trespassers, then the moment never happens here. Because what happens is, and I've been describing this now for a day and a half after reading you, what happens is that he looks this way. And the Jumbotron is here. He can't see clearly what's on it. So to see it, he has to do this. He has to lean out, and when he leans out, that's what moves the temple to the ear. If he doesn't lean out, then we're having a different conversation here today. Now, I tend to think that it was St. Michael himself that was sitting there, because he does have a statue of St. Michael. He has two now. I happen to think it was St. Michael himself that had the sword, was sitting there going like, because St. Michael has obviously knows what's going to happen, because God can tell him. And St. Michael's going, okay, wait for it, and boom. Pushes the head with the sword, and the rest, as they say, is history. Now, in the time that we have remaining here, and this is a brilliant observation, by the way, and it's backed up by HD slow-mo video, you can actually see that bullet passing in one of the frames. Now, do they have to now finish the job, though? Because now it's out. They're gonna kill. They want him dead. It took two shots to get Blessed Karl's uncle to assassinate the last of the Habsburg. First bomb didn't go off, so they went and tried it again. They got him the second time, and they knew they were coming to kill him, the emperor. Do they have to go back and try and kill Trump again?
Well, who knows? I didn't expect that this would happen. I thought it was possible, but I didn't expect it. I don't know. I don't know. If they do, I think the result is the same. I think whoever did it, the meaning of the event is the same. It simply galvanizes people into a new political reality where you can see finally what the game is. And that game is afoot. For all his flaws, Trump is now the man of destiny, and the people against him are revealed for what they are. This is the moment. That's why I think everything has changed. And you can see that the political illegitimacy radiates across the liberal West, with the Germans increasingly criminalising their opposition and France paralysed by its attempt to destroy democracy in order to defend it. I think there's an enormous irony in the fact, I think it's very funny, but Trump was saved by indicating a graph that's also taboo to the liberal global order about mass migration, an issue which itself is driving the destruction of the liberal global project as people reject it enormously across the world, but also an issue that has been caused directly by liberal global ambitions. It's the forever wars. The wars in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan have driven this migration. It's the liberals themselves who have done it, through their liberal interventions, as they like to call them. They've created their own destruction. This process, whether Trump lives or dies, of the death of the liberal global order by its own hand, is unstoppable. And we are living through it now.
Okay, that's finally, we have 2 minutes left. You're the only person that has actually pointed this out that I've seen. This is okay, let's talk about Corey Compatore for a moment here. Corey Compatore was not just a firefighter. He was not just a dad, not just a husband, not just a all-around a good old all-American man. This dude was opposed to the cult.
Yes.
He was opposed to the cult. Did you know that? I didn't know that until I read it. Okay, now how did you find this, first of all?
I was delighted to find, may God rest his soul, that Corey had denounced the thanatorotic homosexualist death cultist Lindsey Graham by saying that the reason why Lindsey Graham didn't have any children was that all Lindsey Graham's partners lacked ovaries. Because he's a queer.
So this is something that most people won't know about Corey Compatore, and that is this guy was one of us. This dude went to that rally because he thinks Trump can stop the Lindsey Grahams of the world, even though they're buddies. And for some reason, he brought his wife and his daughter with him. And the rest, as they say now, is unfortunately history. But Corey Compatore is definitely an American hero. All right. How do you see the rest of this playing out? Now we only have a minute left. So you say at the top of the piece in the rundown, you give the points. Elon Musk goes full Tonto. All right, we'll talk about it another time. Why do we fight, Frank Wright?
We fight because this is a spiritual battle as well as a political one. The political one is the reflection of the material world. The spiritual battle, this is an evil. This is a great global evil, and it's obvious from its effects. You don't need to listen to my fancy arguments about that. This really is the politics of not just national suicide. It's about the extinction of everything of value in life, including the value of life itself. Not just the celebration of the liberal sacrament of abortion, but also now the idea that the elderly are themselves useless and it's their civic duty to commit suicide in order to help us. This is an anti-natalist, anti-life cult. If you speak for life and for the truth, now is the time to fight for it. I try and advise people to make friends with their neighbours, to lift weights and say their prayers, because you're going to need all three of them.
Okay. Find Frank at frankwright.substack.com. We will publish this interview on the YouTube channel and on the Twitter and on crusadechannel.com as a podcast, and you will be able to find it out there free of charge. God bless you, brother. I got to go because I'm up against the clock. And you did great in your first real radio interview.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll be arrested immediately as a result.